Welcome to the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where we take a deep dive into different educational topics to optimize your life. We're back again with another financial wellness episode. I have Tony from GreenUp Wealth, and I also have my co-host Reno with us today. Gentlemen, how was your day?
Great, man. And it's great to be back. Round 3.
Excited. Let's get it.
Yeah, this is our third one. We're getting in a row and almost like like to say, college class, right? Like we did some, we got so far last time, and then we kind of stopped at, talking about the difference between a 401k and a Roth IRA, and we're like, okay, we definitely want to go down this. It's funny because then Tony's being all smart on me. And it's like, well, what about these others? And I'm like, that's a different topic, or I'm sorry, that's a different episode. Let's keep this simple, right? And that is where I think a lot of educators go wrong. Okay. Now, before we get into the topics today, and this is one thing that Reno and I are trying to do definitely on the podcast is, make sure that we talk about the stuff, but also give action items as far as like, okay, start here, go do this, and you guys, for those that have been listening, you're probably catching this. I try to repeat, if it's just water intake, for example, all right, hey, half your body weight in ounces, of water is minimal, then replace anything lost during exercise. I'll try to state that 3 times throughout the podcast, right? Because, and I can't remember where I saw this study or where it was, but like we as humans almost have to see things 17, 18, 19 times before it like registers. So maybe I'm not being that aggressive where I'm telling you something 17 times in one podcast, but I do try to repeat it a few times to make sure you know where we're at. So
communicate times 10, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But hey, today's is going to be difference between Roth, Roth retirement 401 or 401k. There we go. If I can get my terminology right, just kind of talking about what are the difference between the two, right? What are the similarities, from it, which one, might be better option for one person or a group of people versus the other one, better. And like I say, I would tell the listeners right off the bat, if you're doing either one of them, you're in a good spot, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like we've talked about before, at the end of the day, starting is the most important part. The tweaks and the quarter turns and kind of those fine adjustments can be made along the way, but getting started is definitely the hardest part and the most important part.
Yeah, and I guess you made a mistake. It would be a difference between a traditional 401k plan and a Roth 401k plan, because they both be 401k plans. So I guess, really explaining the difference between the traditional and the Roth is where I would like to go.
Yeah, and I think we can expand on that too, because the similarities are really for the most part, the same with a traditional IRA and Roth IRA as well. So a lot of them are going to blend over as well.
Yeah, and you can do, and once again, correct me if I'm totally wrong with this, you can do blend, right? Like you could do some Roth and some traditional. You don't have to do like one or the other. You can do a mixture if you choose to.
Absolutely. And again, we're assuming that the company plan even allows a Roth version, and that doesn't hold true everywhere as well. So you might listen to this podcast and check with your HR and say, hey, I need to figure out how to get started on this Roth 401k. And you're going to say, we don't have it. And don't get frustrated with it. Say, okay, what's my adjustment? What's the match in the current traditional 401k? And should I explore a Roth IRA option outside of that?
And, I think, from what I understand on this and how I would state this one, like, okay, how do I decide, how do individual, decide and put the pros and cons down, the choices, where they want to go with a traditional Roth really boils down to the question of, when and how they pay taxes on that, correct?
Yeah, you got it. It really does just simply come down to taxes, because when the money's in there, it's going to compound at the same manner. It just depends if you're dealing with pre-tax or after-tax money on the front side, and that drives ultimately the way it is on the back side. So if we look at, a 401k and you're putting your money in there, well, that's coming pre-tax. So it's actually lowering your taxable base for the given year. Okay. However, if you end up with $1 million in your 401k at the end, as you take money out of there to create retirement income, you are going to pay taxes on all of those dollars because Uncle Sam hasn't gotten their pound of flesh yet. Versus a Roth, you're not getting that deduction on the front side. However, all of that money is growing tax-free upon the withdrawal.
So hypothetically, let's say I'm putting, $15,000 a year into my traditional. That $15,000 I do not pay taxes on. So I'm saving up front, whatever tax bracket I'm landing in on the 15,000, so paying less taxes. However, once I put that 15K in, for the next 20, 30 years, then I have to pay taxes on not only what I put in, but also the growth of that as I withdraw it.
Yeah. And I'll give you a real simple example is, if we look at the 2024 contribution limits, not including the catch up if you're a little bit older, no age joke necessary, Mullins. But if you're putting in the standard $7,000, okay, and let's say you do that for 20 years, let's say you're earning 8% over that time, you've put in $140,000. However, using straight line math, which is always flawed, but let's just use it, your account value would be $300 and almost $46,000. So you're getting $200,000 of tax-free growth as you withdraw. So you can see, the numbers are very compelling. I'm not saying that's right for everyone because there are circumstances where the traditional might make more sense. And you might not even be able to fund a Roth IRA because of your income levels. And that might be a reason you want to do it in the company plan as well.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to kind of mention some things in here. So it's like, what are the caps? Because I know the caps that, people can, go out and find, right? So what is the 2024 cap when it comes to a 401k? There we go. Traditional. And is it different in the Roth?
You're looking at about $24,000. Again, there's catch-up contributions if you're older as well. But you're allowed to put in 24 grand as of 2024, and that's up a little over $1,000, I believe, from 2023.
Now, the other question I have, following up on that, and this was actually something that you helped me with, right? Like, and this is where, guys, I want you to understand, having someone in your corner with this is so important, right? I thought that the 24K was total, right? So my company, puts in some money, matches up to a certain amount, and I thought the 24K was the total, but your company match actually doesn't go towards the 24K. The 24K is what you put in, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. That is your contribution limit. And again, just for full disclosure, we are talking about in a 401k, a 403b, or 457. It's going to be different in a simple IRA or a SEP IRA, which are also business retirement plans. But just to make sure that we're level setting, we are talking about 401k, 403b, and 457s.
Gotcha.
So I think it's important to note that on those matches, sometimes it's a certain percentage, sometimes it's a certain amount. So the amount is 24K. Some of us probably that you're listening can't do the 24K, but if your company will match up to 5,000, you should try to do everything you can to aim at that 5,000, so that way it's 10. Whatever the match is, just try to hit that match if that's your lower level.
Yeah, no truer words have ever been spoken. That match is so powerful. It's free money, and figure out if it's 50% up to 7%, dollar for dollar up to 3%. Figure that out and make sure that's a starting point.
Now, you mentioned this earlier, and I would assume that once someone makes a certain amount of money, that they cannot do the Roth account, right? So is there a way when you look at that, does that change year to year? Is it somewhere people can find that as far as like that cap in of what they're making salary wise, so they know whether they qualify for a Roth or whether they don't? Or is that like secret knowledge that you financial people have?
Yeah, no. So one, it depends on if you are if you file in a single manner or joint, okay? But it phases out about 140 grand of combined income um if you are a single filer, and about 240 if you are joint. And again, that number does change on an annual basis. Um, but those are general amounts looking at 2024.
And I made the joke, like, someone can Google that and find those numbers, that are published, right? Or is there a website or maybe somewhere that you would direct people to kind of look up that information if they were just wondering, what did it change to this year, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, it's on irs.gov where you can find, all the information, but, for the true number, for the full 7,000, it's as a single filer, you're looking 146,000, and that is modified adjusted gross income. And I will try to keep everybody awake and not go into modified adjusted gross income calculations. And if you are filing jointly, that number is 230,000 right now. Now, there are also for a Roth, there are some phase outs, which means the more you earn, you can still contribute, but now you can contribute instead of 7 grand, 6,300 grand, 5,600 grand. And that tiers down all the way to $700 as far as, what your contribution amount can be.
I want to pause it right there for the listeners, and I'm going to bring you back to nutrition for a second. And I always have the analogy that I talk to people about when they ask me, "Hey, Jeremy, should I do X supplement?" Right? And I say, "Hey, it's like the George Strait song, check yes or no." Okay, and this is where I'm encouraging, like, this is where the power in talking to Tony and talking to one of his colleagues comes into play, because what is best for you really comes down to individual, right? And we're just trying to do a broad topic and talk about the difference between a traditional and a Roth program right now. But like, it would come down to, like, hey, should I do this or that? And then you got a couple of choices, and whether you answer yes or no there, or whatever the goal is, and then that's kind of how you would navigate that process, right? It really comes down to the individual, where they're at in their situation, what their goals are, what could be best for them.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it changes, just like, again, no different than our health nutrition journey, right? Different variables are going to enter life, and therefore things that might change as far as, what your macros need to be, or the types of workouts that you're doing. Again, no different. We're going to look at an annual basis on, should we be contributing to a Roth, traditional, or some of those traditional plans that we might have. Is there an opportunity to do a Roth conversion? You look at the individual's tax return, you do some analysis, and then you make recommendations there. So again, it's very fluid, because what's right for you today is right for you today does not mean it's going to be the right thing in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And that's where the constant analysis of that financial plan on an annual basis is so crucial. And again, no different than working with you and managing your diet, your nutrition, your workout routine and supplementation.
So I have a broad statement that I'm going to make, and you can, once again, always with this, guys, I try to make these statements of what I understand, and that way we can have conversation on it. But for the average person, they're younger in life, they're just starting working, you're getting started in a professional career, then thinking out loud, the Roth might be the better option, because most of the time they're going to be in a lower tax bracket, right? Unless that person's just out there kicking butt at 24 years old. I wasn't at 24 years old. So I'm trying to look at the difference between, Jeremy's salary at, 23 versus Jeremy's salary at 43. Like, there's a little bit of a difference. Okay. So maybe, the lower salary early in your profession, you'd be better off going with the Roth. And then as you get older, maybe going to a traditional. And that's, once again, just generic me stating that. But does that have a little bit of quote water to stand on?
Yeah, I mean, I can see where you're saying that if you're looking at the company retirement plan level, again, there's limits on contributing to a traditional IRA as well. But yeah, you very may want to lower your taxable base at some point. And again, those contributions to the the traditional 401k are going to be pre-tax dollars, lowering your taxable base. And again, that should really be a discussion between you and your financial planner. We're happy to help with those discussions for folks as well. But again, getting started is the right answer. Doing one is the right answer. Is there sometimes a better way? Certainly. But I would say, getting started is the right thing.
Yeah. Well, I know, one thing that you helped me with, and, we looked at some different options is, once we moved to Florida, Katie had the option to, continue her nursing profession or to go and start, doing coaching for softball. And you decided to open up a business, inside of softball coaching, but also with the future of doing some stuff with kids as far as education goes, because you were teaching me that, as a business owner, that there's some cost savings that can go into, me paying my kids to do some marketing when, on, let's just say YouTube, for example. If my kids are my subjects that I'm filming them, how to squat, how to press, how to do the shuttle run, how to do that stuff, then they can get paid for that, right? And then we can turn around, that'd be a cost savings for our business, but also we can put that into a Roth, retirement for them, right? And setting them up like we talked about in the last podcast, giving them 2, 3, 4, 5 grand, or even up to the max, here in these younger years that will just set there, right? Or they can, hopefully we educate them enough that they can start adding to it, once they got a job. So that's where, once again, I feel it's powerful to have someone in your corner that you're talking to on this stuff, because it truly is individualized.
Yeah. And I think really where the biggest impact is going to be made for folks is really on the planning piece, like you're talking about, understanding, okay, you have a small business. Here are some opportunities that you have that other folks might not have access to. Or are you aware of this opportunity to put money away in this tax favored manner? Again, not talking tax evasion by any means, it's tax avoidance, which is completely legal. And it's ultimately figuring out, how do we keep the most amount of money in your pocket going to work for you, and being able to do it, with your kids. For that example, the power of compounding is just absolutely massive. And it's just such a great tool for people. So again, getting the right advice is powerful. Again, I'll take it right back to you. If I go into the gym and I'm talking to one of the people in there and talking about what I need to do for my diet, I'm probably going to get one answer. If I go to my primary care physician and he tells me how much protein to eat, I'm going to be at the amount for malnutrition, right? Does that sound familiar, Jeremy?
That does sound familiar.
Or if I go to you, a registered dietitian, that is going to understand a lot of the nuances, because there is a high level of specialization, that's where I'm going to be able to get, the truly impactful things that are going to make the big, powerful quarter turns for me and for my goals.
Awesome. I know, Reno, you had I know one question we got came in via email for Tony. So I definitely want to put that question out there. And then any other questions that you have for him on this topic.
Yeah. So this is coming from Stephanie Moore. She sent in an email, and this is regarding some children's stuff. So this is her question. I have considered the 529 plan, however, do not like that it cannot be rolled into an IRA without having to pay taxes on gains. What are some recommended savings plans for minor children to use for education, if that is part of their path, but have options to roll over to another investment account for their benefit if not used for education?
Yeah, I'd say that's a great question. And one, thanks for thinking of us. That's pretty cool, and we appreciate it. And I'm happy to connect offline. You can always email me anytime, and happy to give a little bit more specific answer once I know more detail. You're really looking at it's difficult if you're looking for the best of both worlds, right? Because the reality is Uncle Sam wants their money, period. But sometimes it's blending a couple different strategies together, and it could be a 529, it could be a Coverdell plan, or it could be setting up, a custodial account where, when the kid reaches the age of majority, they're going to have access to those dollars with no restrictions as well. The other interesting thing is with let's say your daughter, goes off to college and it's all paid for. Well, you can actually, because you're the account owner, the child is just a beneficiary of the plan. You can just change the beneficiary to your son, and there is extra money there for their education. And a lot of those are pretty flexible. So now if you decide to go to golf school or culinary school, a lot of those can be used for it as well. So it might be a blending of strategies, but also understanding some of the nuances within the plan and looking at it a collective versus the individual child. But again, if you send me an email, I might be able to get a little bit more specific as far as what you're wanting to cover and help you come up with the right solution there too.
Did you just say golf school so that Reno would be happy?
That's all I heard.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. I am setting up a 529 for Reno here in the next 5 minutes after the call. I got a feeling.
That's what I needed. I got a golf trip in April, so I'm going to need all the investments from anyone.
Crash course. Well, some of us are beyond help. My business partner, Alex, he's a 3 handicap, and clearly we know where he spends most of his time.
That's right. Yeah.
But he's damn good, and I'm damn poor.
Yeah. We joked on this before. I drive the golf cart and drink some beer. That's
Although you did win in Top Golf the other day.
I did. So if Adam is listening to this, he could hit a ball though. He just couldn't hit it straight.
And then that's actually more than half the battle is hitting it straight.
And I thought I had the guy's driver, but evidently I had the female driver, because they're like side by side at Top Golf. And like all I did was take it, and it was awkward. It felt awkward. It probably looked awkward. I would just take it back slow, try to straighten my arms, and then like hit it. And I would just hit it straight. And we were in the middle of the Top Golf, so it would just go straight out into the green circle. And I was scoring points every time. So
5-iron right off the tee.
Okay.
That's all I have to do. That giant club, it just freaks me out. So 5-iron. Let's see. I'll say down the middle. We'll call it ish. How about that?
You keep it on the green or in the green. I mean, luckily the whole course is green, but
yeah, mostly.
Yeah,
we'll go with mostly.
So I want to kind of just recap over, and I don't know how close we'll put these episodes together, but kind of recapping some stuff is like retirement planning can be simple, or challenging, right? I think it's how the person makes and decides it. But I think the more knowledge that you get, and I'll be brutally honest, like on myself, as Reno was saying that question that came through, like I have no idea like what some of those things are, right? And that's where it's like cool for me to even, tweak Tony's, mind and just, trust him in the process of all this stuff, because it is very difficult. I don't say we can't, okay? Because I hate, saying that we can't, but it's very difficult to be a specialist in all areas, right? So like for me, I have chosen, and I made a social media post this other day, like, and it's not, I have no problem putting this on the podcast because it's, people know this. I want to be known as one of the best wellness coaches, health coaches there has ever been. Like when all said and done, that is my goal, and, I look at that sometimes, like if I go over and spend a lot of time in finance or spend a lot of time practicing golf, then I'm not going to be able to do that. Right. Because that's my goal, and I think for people, like if you make it simple, you're good. So, I'm going to say some daily actions, kind of get started what we talked about. Make sure you sign up for your retirement at work. Right. So that would be something that we want to make sure that we do, then decide on, Roth or traditional. Once again, if you need help deciding on that, going in the nitty-gritty as an individual, find help for that. 2, decide on how much you're going to contribute to each account monthly. Ideally the maximum, but at least working up to what your company will match, right? So we got kind of a 2-step goal there. Ideally you're maxing out what you can do, but at least maxing out what you're getting from your company so that you get, and we'll do quotations in the air, right? The free money. Who doesn't like free money? And then, decide, what you want to invest your retirement, contributions in. And once again, I always say that that's where Tony, I like you guys because you take care of that for me, right? You tell me where to put it, cool. I'll send it over at this percentage. You put it into these things, and then make it automatic, right? I don't have to, every time I get paid, I don't have to go in there and cut a check and send it over. It's automatic. Boom, goes in there, and then we rock and roll. So that's kind of my action steps I've gotten written down that I wanted to kind of wrap up my part of today's on from that aspect. So.
Jeremy, that's you mentioned people's retirement plans, and when you think about it, people's 401ks are typically, if not the largest investment that they have, it's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
And what's scary is most people will, put in an S&P 500 fund or a target date fund and let it go forever without looking at, is this diversified properly for me and my age and my time horizon and things of that nature? It's not being rebalanced on a regular basis, which is key to investment success. And so it's not being managed, but it's really our most important financial asset for our retirement. And through some partnerships that we have, we're actually able to go in and actually manage your 401k with you according to your goals using our overall strategies from our chief investment officer. So I think one of the issues that people don't go in there and manage it is because they don't know how, and it's intimidating. Back to specialization. Everyone is specialized in their own way. And so that's a great way that we've been able to help our clients is through being able to actually get in under the hood and actually taking over the responsibility with them as their partner on their 401k, but really overlaying a sophisticated investment strategy to help them.
I think one of the biggest takeaways we can take from this one is the most successful people, and we all know are successful people in our realm, but like they're not sitting here being the professional in all categories. The most successful people I know, they have their financial people, they have their wellness people, they have their golf coach, they have their, it doesn't matter, like you name it across the board. They didn't get to become successful because they knew how to do every single part of the job. You have to hire the people around you to bring in that know what they're doing. Because if you're trying to, and I know it's half the quote, but a jack of all trades is a master of none. And there's a whole nother portion of that, but the front portion of that quote does live true. You can't be a jack of all trades and sit here and be the most successful you can be.
Yeah, a while back, someone had said to me, the rich get richer for a reason, right, wrong, or indifferent. They have access to different tools, experts, and resources that others don't. Right or wrong, it's just a reality. But here in 2024, everything has been built to scale where everybody has access to experts in different disciplines. And Reno, that's such a great point. Take advantage of it. That's why we have Jeremy as our wellness coach at GreenUp Wealth Management, through First Form. And it's just a great opportunity to bring in experts to help you achieve maximum success across the board.
So I have one more question. I'm sorry, I just thought of it. And then I want to ask you guys what you're doing personally to increase your financial wellness. Okay. If someone had multiple jobs, right, on, so in one company matched 3%, the other company matched 4%, right? And would it be beneficial for people to have multiple jobs where they could get that matching? So that would be like a 7% match, or would that only be the case if it was the salaries matched? What would be your, because we say free money, right? So I'm just sitting there and thinking of the standpoint of like, well, someone picked up, and I get it. A lot of times people are picking up extra jobs to make extra money, not necessarily extra retirement, but would that be a benefit if someone picked up an extra job where, it did matching too, and they could get, an extra free money, for lack of better terms?
Yeah, I mean, one, you're typically going to have to be a full-time employee to receive that benefit of the retirement plan. So that's one piece of it. The other part is your contribution limits are still your contribution limits. Those are set by the IRS and federal government. So, you're still going to be under that cap. And so, if they're able to contribute blank, it's going to be based on your contribution rate. And therefore your contribution rates will be based upon what your caps and levels are. So it's probably going to end up in the same ballpark because it's going to be a percentage based upon your contribution limits.
Gotcha. Man, okay. I thought I was doing good on my financial wellness.
Hey, I love it. I mean, hey, thinking outside the box, right? It's great.
Well, it's funny you said that. Usually you have to be a full time, and where that question was coming from personally, because I help a friend out doing a college course, a couple times a year, but actually where even though it's adjunct, it's just one course, there's an option for me to do matching there, right? Of course, the pay is of course not the same as a full-time job. And then there's the Army, which is a part-time job, being in the Army Guard. But with that, and it kind of changed over a few years ago, which we can go into in a different, topic, is now when they did what's the new system called, Reno? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on it.
For retirement?
Yeah.
TSP.
Well, I know it's TSP, but the old retirement system, you didn't get
Oh, they
matched.
had now it's blended.
There we go.
Yep.
So I came in right at where it changed, and I did not get into the blended. I got into the traditional, so I don't get matched inside of that. But with the teaching, there was an option to get, I forget what it was, 2%. And I was like, man, I'm going to get free money. But it all averages out. I thought that was my financial thing I had changed.
We can get into it later, but you actually might be you might be able to get a big old lump sum bonus because you're in that old platform.
Ooh, okay.
Because I'm eligible for a very nice bonus lump sum tax free
At the end.
now.
Ooh, selfishness. We're gonna talk about that later offline.
Yeah.
But
doesn't sound terrible. And to go back and answer, people are hearing TSP and there's all these acronyms and things like that. And a lot of, the things are based upon the articles in the tax code, but a TSP simply is thrift savings plan. Yep. So just
and I think that
there's less confusion for people out there.
Yeah, and I think what we'll do, I was just thinking to myself with that, because you mentioned some of these other ones, and I don't know. I think that's where we kind of stay here in the beginning with you, Tony, if you're game for that, is just kind of going over these different definitions of these different ones, and just painting that broad picture, right, of education. And then, once again, I encourage, the listeners out there, like, hey, reach out to Tony, reach out to his team. If you want someone to explain all this based on your situation, right, and what's best for you, reach out to them, right? Because I think that's always going to be the best approach. Like, we can come on here, same thing in education. We come over here and we do some broad strokes and broad education. But like, if you want the magic, for me, like, I got to see macros, right? I got to see macros on a weekly basis. I got to see how you're feeling, and I know it sounds wonky, but that's where the magic is at. Right? Because there's not, this cut and dry black and white. Now, as you mentioned, I can't remember if this was the last episode or this episode, Tony, like, there's some black and white when it comes to what the IRS rules are, right. But like, there's a lot of magic that happens in knowing the individual, what the goal is, what the individual circumstances are, that type of stuff.
Yeah, and I think, to just draw another parallel, we can sit and build a portfolio for someone because they believe that they were comfortable with a certain amount of risk. But if all of a sudden we're in some of the rocky times and they're losing sleep and, it's distracting them from day-to-day life, at some point they are going to hit the nuclear button and pull that money out. So those are adjustments that need to be made within, as long as it's still going to keep them on track for their goals as well. So again, communication is such a huge part of this all.
Love it. Well, guys, I appreciate, as always, appreciate your effort. Listeners, I hope you guys are enjoying, once again, stepping outside into just financial wellness, because it is part of our wellness overall. And you touched on it at the end, right? Because if we're stressed, right, we're not sleeping and we're carrying the stress over because of finances, day in and day out, that's not going to bleed over into our physical wellness and our mental wellness very well either. So appreciate the listeners. As always, if you guys have any topics that you would like us to talk about, please message them over. Go to YouTube, we're at iTunes, Spotify, all the cool places that we're at. Leave some reviews. Let's see if we can continue climbing those rankings. And I appreciate your guys' time and effort, and have a great day.